We are Geekcentric, and you can be too. Love ya. Get home safe, guys. Peace.
What's up, geeks, and welcome back to the Geekcentric podcast. My name's Justin, and today we are continuing with our spoiler review of Christopher Nolan's latest film, Tenet. But first, if you're joining us for the first time, this is a weekly podcast covering the world of film, television, gaming, toys, collectibles, and all things geek-centric. Joining me as always, I have my co-hosts Nate Shelton and Kevin Hudson, so let's get to it. Now, as I was mentioning, this episode is filled with spoilers, so if you have not seen this movie, do not listen to this podcast. Stop listening right now because we're going to be talking about plot, characters, all sorts of stuff. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's not going to make sense. And quite frankly, you need to see a Christopher Nolan movie for it to make some sense because for us, we're still trying to figure it out. So yeah, let's get right into talking about what we've been kind of like hinting at in our spoiler-free portion is like this narrative, right, of time. So I think it's really interesting that he starts this movie with a obviously what looks to be a terrorist attack in a very predominant theater-like environment as everyone sits in a theater to watch his movie. Also being the fact that, you know, one of his movies was victim of this with Dark Knight Rises with the release. It's just interesting that he incorporated an element like that, not thinking about that sort of thing, maybe not being too concerned about it. I get it, but it startled me, and I think it's just such a vulnerable moment. Like you see people coming in, you know, they see these metallic doors closing to obviously lock them in so that they are in this theater experience. And then it just becomes, you know, pure chaos. And this is where we're obviously introduced to our main character, played by John David Washington, who is only known as the protagonist.
The protagonist.
Yes, that's his name.
That threw me off so much. That threw me off because literally at the end of this movie, I was like, wait a minute. What's the main character's name?
Yeah.
Did they say it?
Yeah, no. We also have a cast rounded out with Robert Pattinson, who plays Neil, Elizabeth Debicki, who plays Kat, Kenneth Branagh, who plays Sator, who's our antagonist, Aaron Taylor-Johnson.
Unrecognizable.
Yeah, right?
I didn't realize that's who it was.
Yeah, I didn't realize until like halfway when he came back. Towards the end, when they were doing their pincer plan, who plays Ives, he's a military guy, and then Clemens.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Yeah, unrecognizable. I didn't know till after.
Clemens Posey.
Wow.
Clemens Posey plays Laura, who's basically kind of like the Q in this spy espionage world.
Right. You would know her as Fleur Delacour from the Harry Potter series.
Right. Fleur Delacour.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. So this is where we're introduced to the protagonist after this first scene, and obviously we see that he is with a team infiltrating this base to kind of get something, right? Which they obviously see at the beginning it was like, what were they trying to get? It wasn't until later that you understood what it was, and things just go stir crazy for him. And yeah, I think that like from this point you're just kind of thrown down this rabbit hole of like what is going on in this world, this Nolan world, and it becomes very expository very quickly.
And can we talk about that exposition? Because
absolutely. Go ahead.
You know, we talked about Inception and how, you know, some film critics might see the exposition in Inception as like the first and second act of that movie as a potential negative in the sense of just how sort of easy they make it for the audience and just talking. I honestly felt like Inception did exposition better than Tenet,
100%.
in my opinion.
That's why I feel like that's kind of why I gave this movie a 7 rating.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that at the end of this, we don't understand everything. I almost think it's kind of interesting that it's going to be a movie that benefits from multiple viewings just to understand all of the little facets, you know. And like it's funny to complain that there was too much hand-holding in a previous movie and then not enough in this one. You know, where does Nolan find the balance? You know, it's almost like he can't win in that regard. I think it was great,
though, the amount of hand-holding he did in Inception to do the complexity, right? Like, I know critics would criticize that. I just feel like it with Inception, at least the ending, it's a little bit more ambiguous.
No, I think by the end of it, they explain what happened. It's just a matter of if you're able to understand it. And I'm certainly not going to go out and say that I was able to understand it. But I think the pieces are there that you can figure it out with enough time and thinking and whatnot. I think it's there.
I think that I want to watch this movie. I think I want to get I want to get enough from the plot and from the exposition within 2 viewings, maybe 3 viewings. This feels like I need to watch it 6 times to really get all the details that I think Nolan is intending for people to understand. And that's fine. Like, I will watch this movie, tons of times because I love all of his stuff. But I do feel like the balance was off a little bit from that perspective.
And I also think that time travel is so difficult. And there are so many loopholes in these time travel movies that you can find that just scream, that doesn't work, that doesn't make sense. That's illogical. And I think what Nolan was trying to do was make the most logically sound time travel movie ever, perhaps. This is a time travel movie, and I think he's done it in a way that it's not simply you go back into a portal and you can do some stuff and change the future. He's showing how you can't go, it's the grandfather principle. You can't go back in time to change something because then the future can't happen, and therefore it can't happen.
Exactly.
And so this is the only way that time travel could even be theoretical in a sense. And
that was well done.
And so because it's so complex, because he really tried to make it grounded in reality as much as possible, it is going to be confusing and difficult to grasp and understand. And so I'm not going to hold that against him, but I definitely understand why it leaves you almost wanting more. I can definitely understand and appreciate that.
Sure. I think, again, this ending felt more like Memento, where it was like we were ending in the middle of the story, right? Like there was more that we needed to see, versus something like Inception that had this, ambiguous ending with the spinning top, or, Dunkirk that has this sort of emotional sort of resonance as, Tom Hardy stands there with his plane burning. Again, it's one of those things where it's like it almost feels like an ellipsis. Fun fact, the word Tenet, we were talking about this, title Tenet refers to 10 minutes forward and 10 minutes backwards, as per the pivotal battle in the climax.
That's really cool because it's 10 and it meets in the middle.
See, and didn't I say that before the movie?
Yeah.
10 is going to have something to do with it because it's that,
Exactly.
it's not an onomatopoeia, is it? Where it's the reverse, I don't know.
That's really cool.
You're an onomatopoeia. Anyways.
Okay.
But yeah, so you were right. That's what I wanted to share, is that you were absolutely right that 10 was going to play a factor in that. And I think that's essentially kind of what he is. He's always kind of, 10 minutes forwards, 10 minutes backwards, kind of. It's interesting. So I don't know. I think
that's really cool.
I think the story, there is a lot to unpack with that story, and really getting to, Sator's plan, and understanding the algorithm and all of this sort of stuff. It becomes, parts of it are served to you in a sort of very digestible way, and then other things I felt kind of get lost. Like I think from watching a couple like recaps, a lot of people said that it started making sense in the middle, whereas I felt like it was making sense at the beginning, and then somewhere in the middle I started to get confused, because I was trying to understand the fact that the materials and the things that they were finding, these artifacts, had been inverted, which is why they worked backwards. It was something that was almost like a part of this material, almost like a radiational sort of thing, right?
Right. And I think, like, to your point about getting lost, like, throughout the movie, like, to the point where I was like, okay, wait, why are they going to get this art now? Why do they need to go and chase this person in a car? Like, I there were so many moments where I was just like, the end, not even the end goal for the movie, but just the end goal for like a specific sequence was lost on me, where I was just like, I didn't feel connected to the character to be like, okay, I know what our end goal is here, whereas all the people on screen did.
Yes. And I think the one thing that stands out is you bring up a really interesting part of the story where they're, after this painting, but it's not after the painting as much as it is getting into his vault, because his vault
Yes.
is what
Yeah.
was the integral
Okay.
part, and they knew that in his vault this drawing would be there. So I think that like, to your point, it kind of deviated. I'm like, so now they're like doing an art heist like in the middle
Right.
of it, but it was
I liked it.
right.
Don't get me wrong. I liked that moment.
Right.
I didn't understand it.
Right. Kev, go ahead.
But isn't it? I find this funny. I feel like I'm almost going to be on the side of defending a movie for once against you two in a lot of ways.
What?
Because again, it's not like you guys didn't really enjoy it, but like, I think it's almost better that you don't know why they're doing something until after. It's kind of a neat thing, rather than, okay, now they've got to get to point A. Now they've got to get to point B. You know, kind of like a National Treasure movie. You know, this one is like, wait, why are they doing this? Oh, for that. And now
But
why are they doing this? Oh, because they needed this, you know?
They do mention it, and I just missed it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was something.
Oh, it's
that's
all
what I
very
mean.
quick and subtle, and you can't
Exactly.
necessarily hear it.
And you can't hear because of the IMAX mix,
No,
right? Like,
But again,
like,
they're also
those
saying
are those
this and this and
situations.
this and this and this, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of information to take in. That again, I don't think it's a bad thing that this not is just something you're gonna want to watch again, but almost need to watch again.
Oh, you need to, yeah.
really take it all in, because you're
sure.
busy going, okay, what did he just say? And he's already said two more things,
Right.
and then now
Yeah.
you've missed those, and you know,
Exactly.
Again, I think
Yeah.
I'm totally cool with the fact that he went. You are never going to be able to keep up with this movie, suckers. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Inception, Interstellar, you can see his films gradually get more and more sort of he starts to sort of let go a little bit for the audience. He starts to let their hands go. It's almost like he's you know, he's taking the training wheels off of our bike now, right? Like he's now saying, "Okay, I trust you, audience, enough. You're all Nolan fans, obviously, so enjoy this, and hopefully you'll be comfortable with everything that Nolan does, to the point where it's confusing, that you'll be okay with how confusing it is." Do you know what I mean?
But I think, you know, with this story, because like we'll talk about characters, but it almost felt like to me that the characters serve the purpose more for us to be introduced into the world rather than actually serve a purpose. The only character
100%.
that I think that we could actually say served a purpose and had an emotional resonance with us was Kat, who has this very human sort of wanting to be with her son and a very core element, which I think you could pull from something like Interstellar, which is this love theme, core value that stays very true to humans beyond time, beyond space.
Or even Cobb
Yep,
and Mal.
for sure. Cobb and Mal,
From,
right? And his kids, right?
yeah.
And all that sort of stuff. So again, grounding it with some sort of human element that feels very connected to that.
I'm not sure they don't have a purpose. I'm not sure that's the correct sort of way of phrasing that. I mean, every
Well, they
character
mean
has
nothing.
a purpose, but I mean, I'm upset to learn that Neil, you know, is basically off to sacrifice himself for the greater good. By the end of it, I was
You were upset about
attached.
that?
I liked his character. Sure, I really liked his character, and I thought that, you know, I felt for him the bravery that would require at the end of the day. Certainly Kat is the only one that has any sort of growth and emotional resonance to her. But I mean,
She
I
benefited
think
from the story.
the characters all serve a purpose. They're all there for a reason, and they're all doing important things, you know. But there is very little sort of character development and growth amongst most of them. They're kind of just
Yes.
who they are at the beginning or the end. They just know more about what's going on, essentially, and we do too because of them.
Right. And they're essentially a vessel for us to learn more about this world and what's going on, and like the parameters of what's happening and the danger of what's happening, versus really, as you said, Kevin, having any real full development. Their purpose is really served to help us as the audience understand where we are and what is going on.
Which I think for your side characters, that makes sense. I thought it was a strange choice for your protagonist, for your main character.
I like it. I don't need some mushy gushy character growth every movie. I kind of like it. He's just a badass who's going through the grind, and you understand at the end why that is. You know.
Well, let's talk. Is it cool if we talk about those characters?
So what
then?
I was
Starting
actually
with-
gonna. Okay, yeah. So if you want, let's transition now into our characters. So as I mentioned, before. We have John David Washington playing the protagonist, who I think like action and just composure on screen was amazing. I thought he was great. He really brought it for this role.
It's the most I've ever liked him.
Yeah, like he's great in Ballers, but like, and like that's where I've known him from, like as playing the cocky football player as part of
and he's
the
good in
Rock's
that
Entourage.
too. But I haven't really watched much of Ballers, and then I really didn't like Black Klansman, so it was hard for me to sort of like him in that.
Right.
I would so John David Washington playing both the vessel for the audience, like we talked about, and our protagonist was kind of like a bullet flying in reverse throughout this film. I mean, he was consistent, he was sharp, and his physicality in the action scenes were. They elevated the character so much, and you can see him become more and more confident in his decision making, like the character, as the film goes on. And I think he does such a good job at representing that, to the point where at the beginning of the movie, like, he's a military guy, like he knows his stuff. That's why he's being recruited. But to see him even at that point elevate. And I think, again, his physicality and the way that he chooses to portray the protagonist throughout the movie is so well done to emphasize that. I just wish that I cared about him more. And I know, Kevin, that, again, that might not be for you, or maybe it's the fact that this is different, that it maybe stood out to you a little bit more. But for me, I couldn't say that I enjoyed it as much.
Right, and I think it goes with the theme, right? You know, let's even go back like to Inception. We cared about Cobb, right, and his goal of what he was trying to achieve to get home to his kids, right? In Interstellar with Cooper, you have his desire to want to get back home to his kids. Even in Dunkirk, like, each of the characters in the different timelines had you felt connected to what they were trying to do. I agree with you, Nate. Like, this character really just felt very self-serving to the narrative to allow the audience to kind of be introduced to this world. I do think
he was like a video game character that didn't talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Obviously, he talked in the movie, but do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, he was meant to be you and the vessel so much that I wanted him to be him.
Now, at the end of the movie, when he and Neil are discussing their past or their future or their present, whatever it is,
felt that
you felt that, like, that's where you started to like really kind of, and that's kind of like, now I want to see that part. Like, I know we're not, I don't think Nolan's going to do a prequel to this movie or a pre-sequel, whatever we want to call it, but like to see how Neil would have been trained or would have been put through that process, it'd be interesting to see, right? So
I will say, honestly, Neil was I love those moments, like the moment where he's like, no, you'd prefer Diet Coke, and I feel like that moment was great, and there were some other moments where they sort of traded banter, which was great for building that character development between the two of them. But I just feel like there were probably 4 or 5 other moments like that I didn't catch. And because of that, I was impacted at the end because of how phenomenal I think Pattinson pulls off that role, but I just wasn't as devastated by it. Like, I need to cry. Let me cry.
See, but the whole point is we don't see that 10 years of friendship blossom, and that's the whole point. Yeah. It happens later and we'll never see it, and that's the whole point of it all. And while it doesn't connect with you, that is the point, is that we don't understand why he knows so much about him, and we'll never get to see that friendship blossom, But I think the small portion of their adventure that they went on gave me enough of a sense that they make a pretty cool team. I thought there was enough, given what was actually happening. This wasn't a buddy tale. This wasn't anything like that, right?
It kind of felt like, though, at times, like a buddy cop sort of thing, right? Like
sure, but again, it's not your traditional, let's see the reluctant partners become friends and overcome their crisis.
Sure. Yeah. I think Robert Pattinson killed it. as this character.
Yes.
I loved
Yeah, this is- yeah.
it's in the trailer, but that scene when the protagonist looks at Neil and says, "You want to crash a plane?" and he's like, "Well, on the ground. You don't need to be so dramatic, right?" Like he just like it felt. He doesn't necessarily he's obviously British, but this was a different kind of British that he talks, not his kind of British.
But
It was
but you
almost South
expect-
African. It was
interesting, but he almost reminded me of he could play a younger Michael Caine. It just how he said it.
Yeah.
It was just
Or-
it was awesome.
It's,
I was
it's
even
the
thinking,
Tom Hardy. It's the Tom Hardy.
That's what I was gonna say, yes.
You got to
Yes.
dream bigger, darling. Right,
Yes.
Darling,
And,
yes.
And this movie for me is that for Pattinson. I've never really seen him in anything. I haven't seen the Twilights, and I haven't seen his his other more critically acclaimed stuff that's sort of given him
films.
a growing reputation. So for me was the Tom Hardy, debut, and that I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to watch this guy in another movie now.
Yeah, I think he was so charming, and really, it speaks to how charming he was that, again, at the end, even though I didn't feel as connected, I still was like, oh man, that sucks. He's got to go die. He's been doing this whole thing to die, and you could see it in his performance. One of the coolest things that I think he did was he really did a great job of looking like he had things under control without giving up his hand. You know what I mean? He did that, and obviously you only sort of you realize that throughout the movie. But thinking back to some of the earlier scenes of the film, I really admired, or I admire now at least, how he was able to really kind of portray that aspect of He knew what he was talking about. He was confident, but he wasn't giving everything away. There was still that mystery.
Yeah,
to it.
but of course he had to be confident because he knows whatever they're doing is going to work, or else he wouldn't
Right.
be there to make it work, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting though to reveal halfway through that he was that Neil was part of this militarist team that was aware of this, right?
Because he couldn't tell the protagonist anything.
Right, and
He-
and you saw the moments too, right? When they're in the freighter on their way through back to the airport, they're talking about the plutonium at the Ukrainian opera, wherever. I think it was Ukraine. At the beginning, basically the show, right? And he references it, and the protagonist looks at him and says, "How do you know about that?" Right? Because he thought he was the only one that he knew. That should have been a dead hint that was that you? Was that you? That
It was in plain
was,
sight the whole time. Amazing,
Right,
Which
right?
is super cool.
But I thought, but
Yeah.
at that moment when he said that, I knew it was him. I knew it was him that was there that saved his ass. But I didn't know that it was going to be this oh, you were the one that recruited me 10 years ago kind of thing, right?
Oh, yeah, the final
cool.
review, the
final
reveal
reveal.
at the
But,
end, yeah.
I knew it was going to be I knew it was him that was going to be that guy with the little orange tag on his bag. So if we're going to shift gears here and talk about Kenneth Branagh plays Sator.
Oh, he plays it to the tits. Oh, yeah.
I'm not usually a crazy fan. I liked him in Harry Potter.
I think he played the best representation of a Russian villain that I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
on
maybe
screen.
ever. Maybe
Yeah,
ever.
he was terrifying.
He was scary and real. He was
Yes.
a real dude, but was also when he yelled, I the few times where he really screamed, I was like, whoa!
Yeah, when he struck her and he would he kicked her and he
and there was that spittle coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
and
then
he
he
wanted
spits
to
on her?
I like when he wanted to step on her face, but he stopped himself because he has that heart monitor thing. He doesn't want to get too worked up, but he knew he could have gone and just those little bits of nuance of how he really committed to that role. He did a really great job. I thought it was interesting though. It was known that he was going to be in the movie, but yet there was this subtle hidden they didn't want to show who this character
Yeah, they
was
sort
right
of
off
they
the
sort of
bat.
revealed him.
Yeah, they revealed him. Yeah, they sort of revealed him.
even to the point where it was a bit cheesy. The camera panned to the left, and then it was the music was bah, bah, bah. Obviously not like that, right?
No.
But it felt like that. I get what you're saying, to the point where when Kevin Branagh came on screen, I immediately looked over at Justin to see your reaction. Of course, you didn't look back, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I was watching the movie. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to kind of to reveal him. even though he was announced to be in, like, he was on the cast list, right? So it was like, of course he was going to be this guy. But yeah, thinking about, what did you guys think of, like, how his I guess his mission, what he was out to do? Did you think that threat made sense to you, or like...
So for as much as he was able to portray someone who was very real, that was one part that did feel a little super villainy to me, like the whole aspect of, like, I'm gonna take the whole world with me. It's like, okay, like, that's worse than Thanos, that's 50% worse than Thanos there, right? So to me it was just a little bit, it was really grandiose compared to, again, what we're used to with Nolan, where I don't really think we've had anybody that's threatened to destroy literally everything on the planet.
But when you get the motives behind, when you find out the motives behind it, right? So he's dying, and so if he can't have life, nobody can. And then, they ask him, like, but what about your kid? And it's like, the future is no place that I want my kid to be growing up anyways. I'm doing him a favor, right? He knows what the future has in store, and it's basically humanity's going to end anyways because the destruction that the human race has done is irreversible. And so if it's going to end, why not have it be me that does it, And then he says, because I'm a god, right? Like, very James Bond super villainy, but again, still grounded in reality enough that it didn't throw me off too much.
I think that's you hit it right there, and that's what I was getting at, is that his motive and prerogative felt very James Bond villain, right? Like, and
but I think Nolan drew from that a little bit,
for sure. And well, he went on the record of saying that James Bond and spy movies were a huge influence on him as a filmmaker, and obviously a huge inspiration to this whole narrative that he's put here with this element of time. But yeah, Aaron Taylor Johnson as the military head guy, who's basically leading this what do they call it? Time pincer.
The double pincer.
Yeah, the double pincer, which very interesting. I like that. I understood just, one team moving forward, another team moving backwards. I thought Aaron was, like, surprising. It was surprising to see him in it. I didn't know he was in the movie at all. That beard,
I didn't even know it until now.
Like, unrecognizable. Right?
Yeah, he was unrecognizable, and I thought, and like, so to find out after that it was him, and I just loved his character. No nonsense, cracks a joke without a smile on his face. Like, I just thought he was like one of my favorite sort of smaller characters.
And I feel like, besides maybe Neil, I feel like he might have been the only other character that fully knew what he was doing.
Well, he was,
you know what I mean? Like,
double pincer.
100%. Honestly, I enjoyed Elizabeth Debicki. Probably, I think she might have been one of my favorite characters in the movie. And again, it's because she felt like a character that actually had real growth and connectivity through emotion, like we talked about, right? To your point, like, again, Neil, the protagonist, even Sator, they were more cogs in the story rather than fully realized people, which again felt like a step back from something like Cobb and Maul and from Interstellar, right? And so I think she did a really, really fantastic job, and that moment, you as the audience realizes that she was jealous of herself the entire time. The moment where she jumps off the boat at the same time that she's becoming sort of enthralled or trapped, she's also becoming free at the same time. And that, for me, was like, whoa, this was so cool. I feel like that hit me harder because I cared so much about her.
Well, it's also interesting. That moment is also the moment that started the descent in that her jealousy over this other woman prevented them from being able to reconcile. And, it's just, there were
cool.
It was such an impactful moment. It was just great. It was great.
Yeah, I think that that was probably the resonating part of her character, was that realization that she was the one that jumped off that boat.
Yep. And now she gets to go off, and now she gets to go live happily ever after with her kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, and
I even loved happily ever after, like the idea of her just making that phone call and leaving the phone message for the protagonist to be able to, like, protect her in the future.
Right.
Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Just quick shout out to Michael Caine.
Yeah.
we were talking about it after, and there's a line
Michael
where
Caine,
it's
yeah.
nice to see you, or
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. or Sir Michael,
Michael.
and that felt like a very sort of Chris thanking Michael for sort of helping. If that's the last time we saw him, it wasn't a long cameo, but he was just as charming as ever. Even just the way he gives him the credit card and says you got to look the part. Like it was a really nice, simple little moment.
To your point, he served his purpose by obviously giving us a little bit more expository information about who Sator was and Kat and this whole other sort of where he needs to go for his next part of his mission. To see him and to have him consistently in these movies, either as a key role or as a side role or as just a voice, that is a constant collaboration between Nolan and Michael Caine that has gone on for several movies. So it's nice that if they, in this one, at least if it is a send-off for him, and it does, to your point, feel like a send-off, they referred to him as Sir Michael, just to kind of, pay that homage and that note to him as well. So I think that's really great. Moving from characters, I thought maybe we could talk about some favorite moments. Nate, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, okay. So
some of your favorite moments, like
I can give you like two, maybe. Well, I think I've already mentioned one of them, so I'll give you three. Obviously, how mind blowing it was to see that reveal of Elizabeth Debicki's cat jumping off the boat. Again, that was it felt like a fist pumping moment for me, at least. So I really, really enjoyed that, and the way that they shot it, the way that they pulled that off. I think the only other two that really stood out for me, and I think they might be on your list as well. One of them would have to be the fighting scene in the hallway with the incredible backwards fighting. Like, I don't even know how they did that, but that was honestly such a fantastic moment, and I honestly think it was a fantastic moment the first time, and it was equally as fantastic the second time, if not more so.
Well, yeah, like I was gonna bring that up, so I'll just tag on to you.
No,
there's
go for it. Yeah.
one moment, and so the first time he's fighting the SWAT guy in the mask, and he does this weird thing where he's on his back, and he like uses his feet to pull himself towards the protagonist, and it looks so weird. But then when you see it, inversed and from his perspective, you realize he's actually scooching backwards and pushing backwards towards the gun. Yeah. And I just think overall, the way they did because again, it's not backwards, right? But it's, instead of like, people aren't, when they're inverted, they're not walking backwards and doing everything backwards, but they're doing everything against the flow of time. And the way that these people physically demonstrated that by like moving in such weird, I just thought the physicality of the actors to pull off such a unique spin on sort of going reverse through time was great. And that one little moment where, you see the scooching and just the flips and it was awesome. It was definitely awesome.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
And then I would also say, like, dude, the plane crash, right? Like that massive plane, the fact that they actually did that, I think was super, super cool. And just like the again, we talked about the physicality of John David Washington, the physicality of using that plane and seeing the things get crushed and seeing it go through the building. I thought that was such a cool moment. And I loved seeing, I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy from Yesterday was in this movie, helping them pull off that
Patel,
moment,
yes,
right?
he was excellent
Amish
as well.
Patel. And then some other gentlemen as well, but like just seeing how smoothly they pulled that off, where he goes in and there's that bit of comedy where he's like, does that look like meat or vegetables to you? Can you take a... And then he like immediately just grabs them and takes them out. And the way that they get off the plane as it's still moving, and then just start like walking backwards into the crowd as if like they're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, I thought that whole sequence was really, really well done.
Those poor pilots, they just huck them off down that slide, and you see them hit the
that
ground
first guy
and
really
tumble.
he ate it, man. Like he just,
and I bet you that was a physical, practical stunt.
So just to give
That's
you guys
crazy.
a little perspective on that, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Tenet actually has under 300 visual effects shots in the entire movie. also put it into perspective a little bit more, Endgame
Yeah.
has over 2,000 visual effects shots.
There you go.
Interstellar and Batman both had about 620. Inception had about 500. The Dark Knight Rises had 450. So this is literally one of these least visual effects focused movies, which is obviously
That's
something
really
we
cool.
knew about him. He doesn't necessarily like to overly use CGI and visual effects. He will, obviously, if it makes sense.
But, and like Nate, you mentioned the airplane and and how we're saying that Nolan just keeps upping his game, We thought the truck actually flipping in Dark Knight was something, and he's like,
Right.
I'll up that. I'll crash an actual giant freighter plane into a building,
So apparently
Dude.
they were originally going to just do it as a miniatures, right? Like that's how they tend to do a lot of these things. So he was planning to do this airplane crashing into a hangar with miniatures. It ended up becoming so expensive that it was actually cheaper to just buy the plane and blow it up. I'm like, wow, like that's crazy to think that, the miniature would cost so much more that it blew my mind a little bit. I was like,
I could almost imagine. I could almost imagine the scene where Neil is talking to the protagonist, and you already mentioned it, and convincing him of the plan to drive a plane into the airport. I could almost imagine that being brought from real life experience for Christopher
That's
Nolan,
exactly it.
talking to some of the other production, and just being like, "This is really what we have to do." And then,
exactly.
And as good as miniatures look, because miniatures it's amazing how they're able to use tricks to trick us and deceive us. But you felt that. It was real. That was a real plane crashing into something. It was such a massive practical effect that I'm glad they went that way.
Yeah, for sure. I think that helped really sell that scene, obviously, that much more. And it was immersive with the IMAX film. Nate, as you were saying, Nate, that action scene in the hallway was probably one of my favorites as well. As well as the whole end battle, to see some of the stuff happening backwards.
that was cool.
The building that's being rebuilt and then blown up again. It was blown and then it's being rebuilt and the camera's panning up and then it's blowing up again. It's pretty insane to see all the sort of to be so cognizant of all of the time elements in a battle. Do you know what I mean? Whose bullets are going forward, whose bullets are going backwards, and who's
In a weird way,
Yeah.
visually, it reminded me of Starship Troopers. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's
desert
the
battle
outfits that
scene?
they were all wearing.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me
What a crap
visually
movie
of that.
was.
No, for sure.
Hey, cult classic there.
I was surprised I know of it. But yeah, no, I think I think it that battle scene was super cool to kind of see the way that it was ending at the same time. I did start to pick up that very moment that we saw the car driving towards them honking like crazy. I was like, okay, that's either the protagonist or that's Neil somehow doing that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah.
And it's interesting kind of what you said earlier, Justin, about how people mentioned they were picking this film up at the middle. I definitely wasn't. I definitely was starting to be like, okay, now I get what they're doing. And this was right at the end of the movie.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the battle sequence at the end was really, really well done. That I found as an overall thing, the action, it was thrilling. It was very, very thrilling. And I think that that's something that he nails really, really well with how he integrates action into his, overall very complex narrative.
And still doing it to service the narrative, right? Sure. Still doing it in a way that doesn't feel like action for action's sake. Yeah. Still doing it to further emphasize the idea of time reversing backwards. That car chase scene, man. That, again, these are moments where, some of them I saw in the trailers, and I was still very much this is awesome. Yeah. Watching it, I was like, this is so cool. I've not seen this before.
Mm-hmm.
I think, all the action sequences were really well done. Definitely the second time at the hangar was my favorite. Just, again, seeing the scene again from a different perspective, that's one of my favorite aspects of a time travel movie. They see as they're leaving the hangar in the ambulance and then see themselves running in. That was so cool. Even in the final battle, you mentioned, Neil Pattinson's character gets in the car and it's him who's honking at them. Those moments where you're seeing the same thing from different perspectives is always really, really enjoyable. And I got to tell you, I can't remember a time where I was so tense where he's in the car and he's reaching for the brake, and I was like gripping my seat as he was getting closer and closer to the stop traffic. Like, I felt sick to my stomach, like I was in that car about to crash. Like, Nolan just has such a gift of filming things that are so believable that I got sucked right into that
awesome.
moment. Yeah, I was terrified for a split second.
He definitely knows how to like really create tense moments through cutting. Everything is just it's all very intricate with how you kind of like get really tense into that moment. It's very well done. Good call out for that one.
How about you, Just? Any other standout?
No,
moments
those were all the ones you guys mentioned were the ones that I that stood out for me.
Yeah,
so.
I think we're all kind of on the same page in that the action.
I think generally,
amazing.
like as I said, like the action is the highlight of this movie. As much as the story is ambitious, the action sequences are incredibly ambitious, and they just add to the overall narrative and the complexity of it, and serve it, as you were saying, Nate. It serves it really, really, really well. But yeah, I feel like kind of the way we've looked at kind of reviewing this, talking about high level the story, getting into some characters, and obviously highlighting favorite moments. I think this is a good way for us to kind of talk about the things that really stood out from this movie. But what are your final thoughts overall?
I mean, again, this is going to take multiple viewings to fully, and I don't know if I'll ever fully understand quite what's going on. I'm not much of a science guy, so I'll probably never really grasp the sort of scientific principles and theories he's sort of utilizing here. But I'm hoping after a couple times I can at least understand how the narrative part of those theories sort of really functions. But I'm okay with that. I'm fully on board with a movie that if it's well done and enjoyable, that I have to watch again just so I can appreciate it even more. I think the one negative that I have is the same that we all had, and it's the audio was lacking in certain aspects, and I wonder. Yeah, and I wonder if watching it at home on a less, bassy and sort of resonating sound system, you might be able to hear the dialogue just a bit better, and that'll only sort of help.
Nate, your final thoughts on Tenet?
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I think the story is fantastically original while being still familiar for Nolan fans. And it does all this while still providing the necessary ingredients for a big blockbuster film, similar to what Inception did about a decade ago. It's absolutely stunning to look at. Again, shout out to Hoyt van Hoytema, which is always a fun name to say. And the soundtrack is capable of holding its own against Zimmer and Julian. I just wish the film held my hand a little bit more to make me feel the impact of what I think is a very strong script. Instead, I'm left deciphering the complexity of this movie while trying to understand the protagonist's goal in each scene for about 75% of its runtime. It's his boldest movie to date, which I think works both for and against the film, in my opinion. And while I can't say it's my favorite Nolan film, I think we said it best in our Nolan review episodes that even his lesser films are still phenomenal.
Right.
And I do believe that this is true for Tenet as well.
Yeah, well said. It is a bold movie. It is Nolan in its tradition of what it deals with and how it does. I do wish that the movie could have helped me understand a little bit more of the complexities of it. I don't mind something that has me thinking and guessing, but I like something that kind of can still provide the same amount of information while also trusting me to understand other aspects, which I think Inception did really, really, really well. And obviously other movies like Interstellar, right? Like I think Interstellar does do it to a certain degree very well. Like the science actually makes sense. Again, very bold in terms of a narrative, and I think Nate said it best. It works. That works for it and against it in both aspects. Very ambitious. Action scenes were very enjoyable, and they just keep getting better, and they're thrilling beyond all means. So overall, this movie is not my favorite, but it's definitely not the worst movie he's done. And I don't really, like you were saying before, there's not really a worst movie. There's just movies that you would choose over others. I don't know if I would choose this as over another movie. It definitely isn't in my top 3.
But I would just say, if you're a Nolan fan, whether you're comfortable seeing it in the theaters, that's up to you. But this is, if you're a Nolan fan, you're going to appreciate aspects of it, and you
have to see it. If you're a Nolan fan and you appreciate what he does, you have to see this movie. It's a must. And that I wholeheartedly agree with. Right, even if you can say what you want, like you have your opinions about the movie after, but you have to see it to really fully understand what we're talking about.
Well, yes.
So, but yeah.
I don't even understand what we're talking about.
Well, that's it for us, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for our full spoiler review of Tenet. If you've seen the film and you want to share your own thoughts with us, please feel free to do so by hitting us up on our email at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. But for now, that's it. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, please feel free to give us a rating on Apple Podcast. 5 stars is the minimum that you can give us there. So please rate, review, and let us know what you think. As always, we are Geekcentric, and you can be too, which means you can also check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/Geekcentric. Follow us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT. And of course, check us out on Instagram at We Are Geekcentric. And for all those gamers out there who love to use Twitch, be sure to check Nate out on his channel, twitch.tv/NatePlaysGames. Join us next week as we will be doing another movie review for Disney's latest film. And of course, I'm talking about Mulan, so be sure to tune in for that. But until then, as we say,
love ya.
Stay home or go out safe.
Peace.